This is Athletes as Educators with former pro basketball player, championship winning coach, and author Angela R. Lewis. Angie Lewis interviews current and former athletes who are passionate about sharing the lessons they've learned and the experiences that have shaped their lives. A resource for parents, a guide for student athletes, a source for current and former athletes, keys to transition off the court. Welcome to the Athletes as Educators podcast with Angela R. Lewis.
Welcome to this episode of Athletes as Educators. I'm your host, Angie Lewis. On our podcast today, we have Joy Madison. Joy is the owner of Eat, Sleep, Sweat, a fitness studio out in LA. Joy, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
So this podcast is a tremendous shift in what we've been doing. You know, we've talked a lot about ways to help athletes and things that parents should know, but we are taking over and really working to help young women, particularly young women in college who are transitioning. And so we're going to have this series for the next few months on ways to help college female athletes transition better. So Joy, will you talk a little bit about where you went to college and what sport you played?
Yeah, so I went to California State University of Northridge, or CSUN, out in Northridge, California, and I played water polo there.
How did you start playing water polo?
Oh, very, very interesting story, actually. So I grew up as a swimmer in LA, and I actually did not play water polo until I got to college. Long story short, I had just moved back from New York, where I was potentially going to go to Hofstra University and play volleyball, but that didn't work out for a number of different reasons, and I came back, and a friend of mine who I used to swim with was swimming at Northridge, and he had gotten wind that they were starting as a result of Title IX, and all the things that were going on with Title IX, with equal funding for women in sports and all of that. So they were starting a women's water polo team at Cal State Northridge, and they were looking for girls. I had swim experience, and so he said, hey, I talked to the coach. She's interested. I spoke to her, and that was really my first run at water polo. So I actually ended up going to school for water polo, a sport that I had never played prior to that. And but as a swimmer, a strong swimmer, and just an athlete, I did what I had to do to pick it up and do, and be successful. So, yeah.
You took on a new challenge and got it done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They were talking about free schooling, and I was like, look, you figure it out. It's a ball. How bad could it be? So, yeah.
Absolutely. So what was your greatest accomplishment in your athletic career?
Oh, man. I would have to say I was an All-American swimmer. My freshman year, I made the All-American swimming team for the 50-meter breaststroke event. So that was pretty cool, just for the years of paying, waking up early and being in the pool at 5 a.m. And then for somebody to recognize it and say, hey, your competitive nature and your success in the sport has landed you kind of like recognition just nationwide. So I would say that that's probably one of the highlights of my career as an athlete.
And just congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
All-American in anything is tough to do.
Yeah, thank you.
And so congrats. What was your major and why did you select that major?
So ultimately I got my bachelor's in kinesiology with an emphasis in exercise science. Also pretty interesting story. I started off as a dance major. I grew up, I'm really tall. I'm about 6'2", 6'3". And so my mom knew that I was going to be tall. And so she started putting me in dance classes when I was very young so that I would be graceful and coordinated. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I grew up, I loved dance. And my freshman year, I thought I'll be a dance major. And then it was kind of like, well, I'm not going to be a professional dancer. I don't really want to be a dance teacher. So I kind of moved through a range of different majors. And I went through then to physical education, which at the time they were slashing jobs, budgets were being cut, and PE jobs were being cut. So I thought, I'm going to graduate and not have a job. So then I moved through a couple of different things, and ultimately I landed in kinesiology, and I did physical therapy, and I did athletic training, and I tried all these different hats on under the kinesiology umbrella. And I landed at exercise science, and it was the biomechanics of understanding movement. And that was what really grabbed my attention, and it stuck. And so, I think it was great for me that I bounced around then, when I still had the comfort of being in school and kind of having that cushion. So I ended up doing kinesiology, exercise science, and that's what I graduated in. And I love it. I had a great time.
You bring up something that's pretty common. Most people, athlete or not, bounces around from different major to major. I do. Yeah. same, but it helps you really figure out your niche
Yeah.
going in and staying. And there's nothing wrong with staying with one thing the entire time, but, exploration is important.
Yeah, and because I think a large part of the college experience is also just that, the experience. Of course, the knowledge that you get in the education, but actually being able to explore, like you said, and experience different things within that environment of kind of like having that safety and that cushion of not really being out in the quote unquote real world while you're figuring it out is actually really cool. And for me, because I was all kind of in the general same area, now as a trainer with my company and in this with my clients, I get to pull from all of that. I get to be creative like I was in dance, and I get to be help my clients in the healing process because I have an education in the physical therapy realm or athletic training with taping and all those types of proper stretching techniques and all of that. And so I get to pull from all of that experience, and that helps me be separate and differentiate myself as a trainer because I have all of these different kind of influences that impact my style of training. So it didn't go to waste at all.
Right. That makes sense. Sometimes you don't know why you're learning certain things, and then later on in life, they show up. You're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's why.
Exactly. Nothing is for nothing. So it's always going to come back around for some way or another.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, how did you go about securing your first job after you finished playing it, and what was that process like?
So while I was in college, I was lifeguarding and I was coaching a junior national water polo team. So when I graduated, I stuck with doing that for a while. And I actually fought doing personal training because I didn't want to be lumped in. I valued what I learned and what I knew so much. I didn't want to be lumped in with people who kind of just like took a little course for 6 weeks and said, oh, I'm a trainer. And, not that there's anything wrong with that, because I certainly did become certified in that area as well with a couple of different of the national associations. But I felt like I had such a much deeper understanding of like the body and the human movement and sports and as an athlete and as a coach and from all these different perspectives and angles. And I was just like, I don't want to be lumped in with people, who took a class and now we're making the same amount of money. I felt like I was owed something more, right? Maybe not. I don't know. So ultimately though, what happened is that because I always knew I wanted to have my own space, I started looking for a job, but I looked specifically for a job where I could find and have a contact and connection with the owners so that as I'm getting experience as a trainer, I can also get insight as an owner, a business owner of like what that looks like and what the process is and what mistakes did they make. And they were incredibly helpful with giving me some of the books that they read and did all that. So really, I actually found my first job on Craigslist, believe it or not. I looked in the Craigslist directory and I found this job, and it was great because it was a privately owned facility and they had a very limited membership. And so I knew that it was a great place for me to learn a lot about the business and not just be working as a trainer.
Oh, that's great. Inside Craigslist. Wow.
Yeah, really basic. And I actually, the space where my studio is in, I actually found that on Craigslist as well. So Craigslist has been a huge resource for me in my career, my professional career. Never discount those simple spaces. You never know where you're going to find a gym.
That's a really good point. Would have never Craigslist.
Yeah.
So what has been, you touched on it a little bit. So what has been your career progression? So first your job after college, you worked in the studio. Then what happened after that?
So like I said, I always knew that I wanted to have my own facility. And so I went in kind of with that as my foundation in terms of every move that I made, wanting to get closer to that. And so I went in, I gave myself a couple years to learn. I thought, okay, now that I think I did about 2 to 2.5 years in that studio. And eventually I branched out and started working as an independent contractor, and I started renting space at another studio. And fortunately, because of the relationships that I had formed and the work that I had done, a couple of my clients, when I left that facility, they followed and came with me. So I had a small client base at that time. And then what I also started doing was I worked for the city of Los Angeles. And I started working for the Department of Recreation and Parks. And I started a program for teens where I built the fitness curriculum for the teenagers who were members of the particular facility. It was the ExpoCenter down near USC. Mm-hmm. So I started doing that as well. So with my personal training, I also started to implement what I learned as a PE major with building curriculum. And I did that And that also just kind of helped me form a reputation in the community with people, working with athletes and doing things like that. And ultimately, as an independent contractor, I started building my clientele, my reputation. I started really cementing my training philosophy and style, and then word of mouth and things like that. And ultimately, the opportunity arose when I found my space on Craigslist, and I just jumped on it. So it's really been unconventional in a lot of ways, because I didn't do a whole lot of like business planning and taking classes and learning. I really skipped over a lot of that, and I'm approaching my 2-year anniversary next month of owning the studio, and I'm kind of just now getting to that. I'm kind of just now getting to that part where usually people do that first and then they move into the business. I kind of just found the brick and mortar and was like, ready, set, go.
Do it.
And I dove right in, which tends to be my MO in a lot of things. You heard the story about diving right into water polo, literally diving right into it. So that's kind of been my progression has just always been to keep in mind my purpose. And keeping in mind my purpose, making sure that every decision I make and every step that I take is moving me closer to that, even if it doesn't feel like I'm ready on some level, because I was not at all ready to own my studio, but the opportunity presented itself, and so I said, you know what, if not now, when? And I know myself well enough to know that if I'm in it, I'm gonna do what it takes to stay, and that's what it's been so far.
I think one of the things that we learn being an athlete is that you have to find a way to figure it out. And
Huge.
that's one of the most important traits in any industry these days. So the young women who are transitioning, like, the greatest skill they could have is being a problem solver and being willing to persevere. What are some challenges that you face going through this entire process of owning your own company and just diving in?
Right. Oh gosh. Whew. How long do you have? You know, I think one of the biggest, what I should also say, for a number of reasons, is that I've done this whole process cash out of pocket. So I didn't get any loans. I don't have any investors and doing all that. So this has really been, like, in the truest essence of the words, a solo project. And I think the challenge has been allowing myself, like, breathing room. Like, it's incredibly, I think athletes will be able to relate from the perspective of being very competitive and sometimes being critical of ourselves. We look at playback of games, or we think of the game and we're like, I should have, I could have, we could have, or whatever. And so we don't often allow ourselves a lot of room for error, because sometimes error means winning, or win or lose, and that could be championship situation. And so there's all these different scenarios. But I think my biggest challenge has been to step back and see where, okay, this is where, if we're looking from the athlete's perspective, where my teammate comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where maybe I'm not a great shooter, or maybe I'm not a great defensive player, or maybe I'm not, or whatever those things are. And here's where my teammate steps in. So for me, it's like, marketing is not why I got into business.
Yeah.
So I need to be okay with relinquishing control of that and giving it to someone else, and not feeling like the burden is on me because of whatever reason. So for me, it's been less about the actual process of doing the business and more about my approach to the process of doing the business.
Okay.
And really allowing myself the room to, like, have teammates and let my teammates do their job.
Mm-hmm.
Because I come from swimming is an individual sport. I'm in my lane. This is my race, and it's really not about you. So I've had to adjust my mind to a more of a team sport approach, if you will.
Being willing to let go and let teammates carry is hard when you're used to your individual performance being able to determine much of the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really hard. How did you decide that? Like, why did you decide to relinquish?
Because I understood that the purpose and the reason that I'm doing what I do is so much greater than me. The same reason why I even agreed to do this podcast and to contribute to this project is because I understand, like, it's so much bigger than me. And if I get caught up in trying to do it all, I know that something's going to suffer. and it won't be to the full capacity and potential of what it could be, in terms of the impact and the people that I can reach. And so I think for me, it was just saying, hey, it's time for you to remember why you started and let that be your focus. And then these other things that are essential and important, but not necessarily your strong suit, that's where you call in your teammates. And it was really just about understanding that if I really want to go for the impact that I know I'm supposed to make, I have to allow somebody to help me. Otherwise, I'm sacrificing what this is supposed to be.
That's right on point, Joy.
Yeah.
Right on point.
Yeah.
And it's important that there's clear self-evaluation, is what I hear you saying. Like, you
For
have
sure.
to be really clear about who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, or else it's really hard to get anything done.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So how do you de-stress from everything? You know, these young women are about to graduate and it's really intense for them right now. But what they don't know is that's nothing compared to
Yeah.
really step out there and the stress comes. What do you do to de-stress?
Particularly as a business owner, because even though I have relinquished control in some areas, I still do wear a lot of hats.
For sure.
So for me, what it's important for me to do is always factor in to my schedule, like physically on my calendar, time where I'm not working.
Yeah.
And occasionally I might have to schedule a meeting somewhere in between there or whatever, and so that happens. But for the most part, I try to keep that block of times, maybe a couple hours in the day, just completely clean. And that could be for a nap. That could be for my own workout, because it's hard for me to squeeze them in because I'm always doing someone else. Or that could be for prayer, meditation, which I do a lot, or journaling. Typically I have my quiet time, and during that time. But I really prioritize that. I really make sure that it's something, because a lot of times, especially with working out, the number one thing I hear from people is, I don't have time. And so I make time for myself. Like, every day on my calendar, when I'm scheduling my clients, I say, I'm not taking anybody during this block of time.
Yeah.
And that's how I allow myself to have what I call like a white noise downtime, quiet time of just whatever I choose to do. And that's for me. No one gets to infringe on that.
That's really good. I like that. Building,
Yeah.
locking it in to make sure that
Yeah.
because like you said, our calendars can get so full. And there is also this mindset that you go hard, sleep is for suckers,
Oh gosh.
right?
And I hate it. And I really, because even though I know from an experiential standpoint of like having been sleep deprived, and also from the knowledge standpoint of understanding what sleep deprivation does to your body, the pressure that you hear from culture that says, you sleep when you're dead, or, grinding all night, you sleep, we grind, or sleep, or whatever, all these things that people say, it's like, and you start to feel pressure, like, could I be further along in my business if I would be willing to sacrifice this? Or, I'm going to bed at 10:30 feeling guilty because I know somebody's up till 4 a.m, or, and I'm like, but I'm like, you know what? And then what? Like, I want to do this because I know the value of it. And I don't want to create an environment where doing this is I begin to resent it.
Yep.
And then I'm no longer excited about doing work that is so relevant and so important. Like, I don't want to create that kind of environment around what I'm called to do. So I just keep that in perspective, and I prioritize myself, because I know maybe for a week or two, you may have seasons where you do have to grind and you do have to burn the midnight oil and do all those things. And I get that, but long term, chronically, it's not worth it.
Yep.
You can't do anything, no matter how much you love what you do, you can't do it without your health. And if you're not sleeping well and taking time to prioritize yourself in some way, you are sabotaging and really putting your health at risk, and it's not worth it.
No, not at all. Let's talk a little bit about your company.
Yeah.
Glad we haven't talked about it. Tell everyone about it, what your goals are, what are your long-term goals, what's your vision?
Oh gosh. So my vision for Eat Sleep Sweat So I called it Eat, Sleep, Sweat. I got its name because I started kind of doing like miniature blogs, I guess you can call them. This was back when like Facebook had notes, and I was like making notes and
Hmm.
sharing fitness information with my friends, and I would sign off and I'd say Eat, Sleep, Sweat, and that was like kind of like my sign off.
Oh, okay.
And so then when it started to come into more of a clear view for me that I was getting closer to having my own and doing all that, I kind of started playing with the idea of names and all that, and it came up, and I said I really like it because it's comprehensive, right? It deals with the nutrition, it deals with the rest and recovery, it deals with the fitness, it deals with all of that. And I think that we need to have a much more comprehensive and holistic approach to fitness. It can't just be about one thing. So one of the things I say to my clients all the time is that you cannot compartmentalize your life. So my vision for Eat, Sleep, Sweat moving forward is that we will be the premier place to come and get all things health and wellness, from emotional and spiritual wellness to mental health to your physical health, and from working out and fitness. So I'll be starting school in the fall. I'm going back and I'm going to get a master's in clinical psychology. And that is because I want to be well equipped to help people really deal with the mental aspect of their fitness and health journey.
Hmm.
Um, and so I really want to be that premier location then where I want to help people connect the dots. Like, what's going on in your social cultural environment? And then how is that impacting your health and the decisions that you make about your health? Like, how is your social circle impacting your dietary choices? Or how is your family tradition impacting your approach or thoughts about health and fitness? Or how is your growing up as an athlete impacting that, right? Because sometimes it's hard for us to shake our competitive nature, and we want to go hard, but as we get older and life changes and we become wives or mothers or whatever our goals may be beyond that, it becomes challenging, and it can get hard to adjust to not having that same structure that we're used to as athletes. Like, the great side of being an athlete is that you are disciplined and you have the time prioritization and all that. But then when that changes in the working world, it's kind of like, where does that fit in? So my goal and my vision with my clients and the people is to really connect the dots between your outside environment, how that's impacting your internal environment, and the decisions you're making about how you approach and handle and manage your health and wellness. And it sounds like a lot, but again, you can't compartmentalize your life. So if you're dealing with stress over here, how is that impacting your fitness life?
Because it's
And
all.
your ability to commit and to be consistent, and all of that is together. And I want to help people see that in a very realistic way that they can understand. And then it helps them to prioritize changing it or fixing it if that's a necessary thing for them.
That's tremendous, and that's so necessary because oftentimes we only know about one aspect of overall health, and so
Yeah.
the fact that Eat, Sleep, Sweat is going to connect all of those dots is going to help so many people out. What are some skills, as we wrap up, what are some skills that you would say are absolutely necessary to be competitive and to stay relevant in the world,
In my career specifically,
for the female
or
athlete?
just in general? I think, okay, so this is something I talk about. I mentor young girls as well through my company. I work with a lot of young women athletes. And one of the things that I talk to them about is I say to them, we are in a generation now, what used to be probably a lot of their parents, you graduate, you get a job, you work that job until you retire, and that's your life.
Yep.
And that's not the case anymore. It's very much bouncing around. A lot of it is creating your own lane, making your own job, working for yourself. There's all these ways, YouTube, but there's ways to really create and be in control of your whole everything. And so I think what's important is to always be clear about why. Because there's gonna be a million different hows, and you can get caught up in the how, and then that can kind of pull you away from your why, because you start, like I said earlier, I remember I didn't get into this to do marketing. Marketing is an important part of my job, but if I get caught up in the how, like the marketing and then whatever else, then my why gets lost, and then I'm not relevant anymore
Yeah.
because I've not stayed on top of what makes me me. in this industry, because the fitness industry, particularly in LA, is incredibly saturated, and everybody wants to look good, and there's all these different things, and then you've got to compete with like the shakes and the teas and the waist trainers and all these other things that are like giving you quick fix. And so I would say to the young athletes who are getting ready to graduate and entering the working world, to become very clear about what it is, like what impact do you want to make, and then be ready to do that in a range of different ways, because it may not look like whatever you think it looks like right now, and you've got to be open to that. So similar to a game time situation where you have your plays and you have what's going on and you got the X's and O's and coach told you to do whatever you're going to do, but when the game starts and things start happening, you got to be able to make decisions on the court, in the pool, on the field, on the floor, wherever you are, responding to the scenario as it's playing out in that moment, to make the best of whatever it's going to be for your intended goal, which is to win the game, right? Or to win whatever, with the meet or whatever it is that's going on. So be clear about your intentions and your why. So I give 3 words: clarity, honesty, and willingness. Be clear about what it is you want. Be honest about what it's going to take to get there, and then be willing to do what it takes. That's really...
Yeah, and then drop the mic.
Yeah, that's it. And then drop the mic. Clarity, honesty, and willingness. Those 3. If you can go into whatever you're going to do with those 3 things in mind, and just be willing to like gun it out, whatever that requires of you, with you know, your self-care and all that in mind, of course. That's really like the way of the world now. Like everything, the world is moving so quickly. We don't have time to settle. Like, we got to be ready to go.
Joy, thank you so much for your wisdom. There is no doubt that this interview and your portion of this project is going to positively impact some lives of young women. If people want to learn more about you, want to learn more about Eat, Sleep, Sweat, how can they connect?
They can visit my website. It is www.eatsleepsweat.com. I'm also on social media. You can find me looking for Eat, Sleep, Sweat, or you can just look up my name, Joy, Joy, Madison, Madison. I'm all over. I have Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. I'm all over those places. So search my name or the company name and I will come up, and you follow me there. I have events coming up all over the place, classes, personal training. So yeah, please, if you're in the LA area, I would love to meet you and sit down and chat with you or help you out on your fitness journey.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Joy.
Thank you so much.
This is Athletes as Educators.
Thank you for listening to the Athletes as Educators podcast. Connect with me through the Athletes as Educators Facebook page or at Athletes Educate on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. For more resources and information about today's podcast, you can check us out at AngelaRLewis.com.